Michael Burry revealed American markets under heavy attack. This has never been seen before in all of U.S. history. The streets of America are getting more and more chaotic. The rate of offenses has alarmingly spiked in recent months, and millions have decided to relocate from crowded urban centers to rural and suburban areas in an attempt to find safety and comfort as conditions worsen in our major cities. This year's events are making many people consider moving elsewhere. Today we're going to talk all about why American markets are under heavy attack. So watch the video till the end, because today's video is going to be the bomb. Welcome to Michael Burry Secrets, your daily dose of Michael Burry. If you're interested in everything around Burry, this is the place for you. Subscribe if you want to stay updated with all the Michael Burry secrets, predictions, and stay one step ahead in the financial world. Watch the video till the end, and make sure to hit the like button if you want to be a millionaire within the next 3 years. Don't forget to enable all notifications to join our weekly cash giveaway pinned in the comments. Now let's get to our topic. Since last year, booming real estate markets such as New York, San Francisco, and Seattle started to cool down as migration trends shifted. Now, small cities across the country are seeing housing prices skyrocket to levels never before seen, as demand for these properties has absolutely soared over the past year. On the other hand, those who own homes in big cities are seeing the value of their properties sharply drop, since demand is significantly slowing down in our core urban areas, which are currently being torn to pieces by offenders. As an increasing number of Americans seek to get away from such crowded and turbulent areas, a new Redfin report found that page views for homes in rural communities and small towns were way up this year than when the virus began to spread aggressively all over the nation last year. Compared to 1 year ago, page views of homes in rural and small towns jumped by 115% and 88% respectively. Of course, now that worsening social tensions, riots, and civil unrest have been added to the equation, it's only normal that more city dwellers start considering a change in residence. In fact, one recent poll found that disorder in our streets is one of the main factors making people want to live in a rural area. Meanwhile, urban real estate markets that once were red hot like San Francisco have been slowing down in a major way. According to Bloomberg, amid growing fears of another economic slump and a financial meltdown, the demand for real estate is unexpectedly rocketing in regions outside San Francisco. Agents say that this new migration trend may become the norm for a long time. In the good times, our major cities had plenty to offer, but these times are long gone, and at this point most city dwellers have become entirely convinced that their communities are simply no longer safe places to live. Sadly, lower-income workers cannot afford to move to an isolated haven with their families. Some argue that this trend is only exacerbating the wealth divide. This is an example of another way the most advantaged, the most affluent, have isolated themselves from this latest crisis. Patrick Sharkey, a sociology professor at Princeton University, told Bloomberg. It's a very small segment of the population that has another home that they can go take off to. In several states, and particularly in California, people are being stolen from and physically assaulted on the streets. For example, in Los Angeles, over the past 2 years, delinquency rates drastically surged all across the city, and now even upscale neighborhoods are being affected. Residents are freaking out after a spate of flash mob lootings at high-end retail stores have been accompanied with a disturbing increase in physical aggressions in the suburbs, according to the LA Times. Sadly, our leaders are only paying attention to these issues now that rich people are being affected. For a long time, alternative economists have been warning about the looming decay of our major cities, only to be left unheard. Now this is where we are. America is facing a mass exodus from the cities that used to represent us as a strong, healthy nation. That image of power and prosperity is rapidly changing as our urban centers crumble. Those who have the means to move are doing it and not looking back, but millions of others may find themselves trapped inside an orderless atmosphere as things start to collapse all around us. An imbalance of supply and demand for rental properties in suburban and rural areas, fueled by rising demand to live further away from cities, has led to asking rents in suburban and rural areas jumping by 11% since before the pandemic started, compared to just 2% in urban areas. A sustained desire from renters for more space outside of cities has led to increased demand for suburban properties, contributing to the number of available homes to rent in the suburbs dropping by 45% compared to before the pandemic and down 61% in rural areas. This means more competition amongst tenants for the properties available, with tenant demand per rental property available in the suburbs rising by 155% compared to pre-pandemic levels, and soaring 224% in rural locations. The analysis of over 300,000 rental listings compares tenant demand and available rental stock across Great Britain in August 2021 with February 2020 to measure the impact of the pandemic on tenant behavior and rental availability. Although tenant demand in urban areas is also rising, there are more properties available to choose from. Of all the available rental properties in Rightmove, 64% of them are now in urban locations, a jump from 48% pre-pandemic. The proportion of available properties that are in the suburbs has dropped from 46% to 33%, while rural areas have declined from 6 to 3%. Competition for available rental properties has also increased in urban areas compared to before the pandemic, though significantly less than suburban and rural areas, plus 82%. All of this has led to rural and suburban rental properties flying out the door, with the average rental property in rural locations finding a tenant 18 days more quickly than before the pandemic, suburban properties finding a tenant 2 weeks more quickly, and urban rentals finding a tenant 5 days faster. Tim Bannister, Rightmove's Director of Property Data, comments, "A notable impact of the pandemic on the rental market has been the change in the distribution of available properties between urban and suburban areas. While the proportion of homes available to rent in urban and suburban areas remained steady in the years leading up to the pandemic, the data shows a significant change in 2020 as more renters look to the suburbs. A desire to relocate and move to a home with more space has meant that demand has greatly outstripped supply in these areas and also in rural locations, which in turn is propping up asking rents. Now that more people are returning to offices at least part of the week, we'd expect to see greater demand for urban rentals over the coming months, as more people need to be closer to work. However, the scale of change we've seen over the course of the pandemic means this shift isn't going to happen overnight, and it will be interesting to continue to monitor the lasting impacts of the pandemic on demand in the rental market for the rest of the year. Well, that's it for today's video, guys. Also, we would like to mention that this is not a channel intended specifically to provide financial advice, and we do not ask you to invest in any company. This is merely a channel directed towards bringing educational content to your doorsteps. With that in mind, before you invest in anything, we recommend you do thorough, wide-spectrum research on the topic. And make sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. See you next time on Michael Burry Secrets. Bye.